Hello, everyone. We are very fortunate to have two of our community rabbis here with us this evening to continue the discussion and looking at the specific topic of afterlife. We have Rabbi Emeritus Aryeh Azriel, and we have Rabbi Eli Tenenbaum. And so, why would I waste any more time? I'm just going to turn it over to you. And then Michael will have his email in the chat, and you can reach out to him individually. Thank you so much for being here. Let's take it away.
Okay. So as a secular Israeli, so before I became a Jew, I was secular Israeli. That's a whole different religion. And so I had different opinions about the subject. And then, of course, I went to rabbinical school and continued then working in synagogues, both in Baltimore and in Omaha. And as a result of the work and the experience, especially before death, that I encounter with members of the congregations, I became a religious Jew that developed ideology about the topic. So I promised to start with a song. Yes. Okay. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד. If you know the song, join me. גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, כל העולם כולו, גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. Okay, so hopefully you all know what the meaning of this song is. No, I'm just kidding. So the whole world is a very narrow bridge. And the most important thing to do is not to be afraid of walking on that bridge. I find this song in a way summarizing the topic. So when I went to rabbinical school, my philosophy of what's after death was that there's nothing after death. Complete nothingness. But with the work that I have been doing and witnessing those moments when things are really at the end, both from people that were patients or were in nursing homes, from members of their families, from my own feeling and knowledge after the death of my wife, may her memory be for a blessing, I learned new things about the topic. And I would like to share them during the evening. So this is a little bit of introduction of where I'm going to go. It is possible, I really don't know where I'm going to go, but hopefully you guys will be patient enough in allowing me to express myself.
Well, you're going to go, you just said, eventually after 120, you're going to the afterlife. So we know where you're going. You know where I'm going. Question, and it's not really a question per se, but it would be perceived as a question. Is there an afterlife? And I know I was on with Hazan Krausman last year with the fabulous topic of unidentified flying phenomenon or whatever it was, that one, right? Is there or is there not? Is there life on other planets, I guess is the other question. So this is a totally different question. Is there an afterlife or what is an afterlife? And I think the first thing that we have to address is what is life? And then we can address what is the afterlife? What would be an afterlife? And does it exist? And that would be the first, the approach to take to begin with, in my view. And to us, when we look at and we read the scriptures, when we read Torah, we read the Talmud describes what life is. Life is a soul that is living in a more corporeal type of form. It's living in a more spiritual realm. And that soul is connected and is combined, animates, as describes in the Torah, when Adam is created, by Yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He was animated. His soul entered the body, and the body is dirt. It's made out of earth, and it became animated. Life was given to it by the soul. The soul gives it life. So that's beginning. That's what life is. Life is a journey between a body and a soul coming together. The body giving the ability for the soul to do things that it couldn't do on its own, and the soul giving life, energy to the body. That is, in a very, very quick synopsis, what life is, how life goes. And then what happens after a person were to pass, what we call in Yiddish, we like to call it, or in Jewish terms, we like to call it after 120, because we are promised to live 120 years. Unfortunately, we don't all reach that, but the concept is.
Thank God.
60 years to plan.
So we say after 120, right? We don't like to focus, right? It's very much not the focus. Death is not the focus.
Or when the last check from Social Security
Right.
comes.
When the last check from Social Security bounces, then you know
That's it.
it's done. You're done. But that means, again, what happens at that point is that the soul then separates from the body. It removes, and therefore the body becomes inanimate once again. It becomes what it was before, and again, it went through a long process, of course. And then the soul goes back to where it was. The soul, again, focusing on the soul again, is eternal. The soul is eternal. There's nothing, there's no death for the soul. And therefore, when we're describing the soul, yes, for the body, is there afterlife? That's another level of discussion. But for the soul, of course, there's afterlife, there's before life, there's during life, and there's afterlife. It's kind of it lasts forever. It's always there. So that's the first approach to, is there afterlife? Absolutely. Now we can start discussing. I think that's what Rabbi Azrael was going to discuss. What is the afterlife? Right? We've established, we both agree. Rabbi Azrael, coming from his perspective on life, the way he's lived life, he's come to the conclusion there's an afterlife. I'm bringing you the perspective that of what I've studied. I haven't lived as long as Rabbi Azrael yet, so I don't have my opinion based on. You see, he's saying it himself. Up to 100. And maybe more. We can go further than 120. Why limit it to 120?
You're right. There are a few more checks coming.
So the question then becomes, what is the afterlife? What are we describing? What are we looking forward to, so to speak? And I think that's what we're going to address in the coming little time.
Wonderful, beautiful. So once upon a time, in my secular life, I didn't think there is anything after. And then as a result of becoming religious Jew, and working with people at those final moments, and also knowing what people are seeking, what they were asking me, just because I'm a liberal, progressive Jew doesn't mean that people don't have questions as liberal Jews about the same topics that we are discussing here. And also my own needs spiritually. I think most of us know more or less about what life is. We remember the curses that took place, that all of us have to work to till the ground, that all of us will have pain in childbirth, definitely the women among us. So we got a little bit of introduction to what life is going to be. Hard work, meager means, and then good luck. I don't think we got a lot of introduction to what will be life after death. I can tell you from what I glean from the textbooks and which one I like the most. I love the idea that when we die, we finally are going to be, hopefully, only those that were righteous on this life will be invited to join the Academy of High. So we'll have an option to go and study with the major teachers in Judaism, but also teachers in other religions. And the only reason why one should not be evil is because when you're bad, you get abstracted view. And I want to be able to encounter those individuals in the world to come from good seeds. I mean, all my life, I tried to be good in order to get those good seeds at the end. And you can finally learn the truth about all the mysteries of the world, all the things that were not known to you and not revealed to you, you'll be able to learn with the master teachers. I like that. I like the ability of having yeshiva on high and to be invited to listen to those courses. I'm sure I'm not going to skip any one of those courses. There was a reason to skip some of the seminary courses, but at the final step, when I'm assembled with the most important teachers, I would love to attend every class, even if it's early in the morning at 7:30. I also learn that in the world to come, none of us will have any more physical attributes. It will be just souls. And I'm looking forward to one day not wearing a brace on the right leg and be free from this tormenting instrument every day and every night when I put it aside. And I love the idea of in the world to come, there's no bodies, just souls. And I accept this notion as a blessing. Now, it's amazing what people have told me in the last few minutes of their lives. Going to a hospital and sitting next to a person that has a very limited amount of hours to be alive, and listening to the stories about their knowledge, and they're looking forward to meet their parents who perished years before, or to meet their children who they lost during their lifetime. I never said or never addressed them as, what are you talking about? I allow them to continue sharing with me their wishes for the world to come. And I think one should never get into a whole ideological, theological discussion with someone that has only a few hours to be alive. But one should allow for the person to be able to share with us, the clergy, but not only the clergy, members of the family should be assembled around the bed. No one should die alone. People should die in the company of other people. And so those stories are important. And it's amazing the vivid description that I kept writing about them in some of those moments where actually I'm going to see my mother, one of them said to me, and there was a whole description of the beautiful face of the mother that the person lost, and she was not in life anymore. But there was also tears that just came out from his eyes. And I felt that there was a wonderful moment of him thinking about the union and being able to see the mother after so many years of not having access to her. And so I left him there, and he enjoyed repeating this story a few times. And every time he told me the story, there was a smile. sometimes when we go to the Plumpkin home to visit people, they will tell us about what their hopes are. And many times they talk about this reunion with dear ones that they don't have. It can be the son that they lost, the daughter that they lost from all kind of illnesses and diseases. And there was a smile when they finished describe to me how they envisioned that meeting. So I sometimes feel when we look at pictures of people that are not with us anymore, it's not that we only look at the picture, but the person in the picture is looking at us. Maybe years of not seeing each other passed, but those pictures should be sometimes turn around so they can see us. Not only we looking at the pictures to try to remember them, but also to know that this is the chance for those people to be able to witness our existence. We can show them the grandchildren. They can rejoice in seeing them. Yes, I believe that actually they are capable in seeing those children, even in death. I'll take some air.
Yeah. Some water?
I can open it.
You want to use them up?
Please,
Sure,
thank you.
you're welcome.
You need a young.
It's whatever. And I also get jars, open them for my wife. That's what we do. That's what we're here for.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
In life, that's why we are here.
That's what we're here
Right.
for. We're here to help. We're here to make other people's lives easier and better. I think that's
Amen.
everybody's job in
Amen.
life.
Amen.
So there's actually a few points to approach concerning, again, the topic of the afterlife. And we're talking about, again, Azrael kind of mentioned this idea, it's just the souls. There's no bodies. It's the time of just souls. And I'll talk a little bit first in this section. I'll go back to some of the things Rabbi Azrael spoke about later on. What's kind of happening? Where do we, where do you go, right? Where someone passes away, his body has become inanimate, his soul leaves his body, his heart has stopped beating, he's no longer alive, his soul has departed. Where does it go? And what's, what is for us, what's going to happen? And then also, how does it feel? What is the family's reaction, so to speak? What's incumbent upon those that are here? And for that, we have to remember that God created the world 5,783 years ago, plus a little bit, about 5 months and 5 months. God created the world. And there was a purpose. There was a reason God created the world. It wasn't just a big bang that clashed together and happens to be a few atoms smacked together. There was Bereshis bara Elokim. In the beginning, God created the world. And the purpose of the creation of the world is for us to do good deeds, to bring the presence of God into this world. That is our job. That's the purpose of creation. Everybody wonders why, right? Why are we here? We're here to do good things, to spread the light of godliness around the world. It's as simple as that, right? It's as simple as that in one word, but obviously it's much more complicated. Exactly what is expected, what do we need to do? That's a little bit more complicated, but what is our responsibility? That's what it is. And that means that what we can accomplish, the Pirkei Avot describes this, and this is mentioned in many places in the Kabbalistic text, Kabbalah, that what can be accomplished here on this world in a few moments is something that's impossible to be accomplished in the world to come, even for many, even if you spend all the time in the world to come. Because the purpose of creation was in this physical realm, this physical world, our bodies performing mitzvah, bringing light to this physical world. So when you're just a spiritual entity, you can't accomplish anything. You can bask in the glory, you can hear wonderful and beautiful energy and hear the beautiful insights and knowledge, etc. But nothing can be accomplished, at least nothing physically, which is the whole purpose of creation. So everything has to be by our actions down here on this physical world. And we use this term up and down because conceptually, that's how it kind of feels, is that heaven is upwards, right? We describe as the afterlife as heaven, but really it's not exactly up and down. It's more here or there, or not really here or there either, because something spiritual versus something physical, there's no real space to be spoken of. It's something spiritual versus something physical.
Except the three groups that can never make it up.
There is, yes, there are three groups, but we're not focusing on that right now. We're focusing on the positive. Right. So for a moment, let's talk about this concept of Kaddish, for example, right? Kaddish is what the mourners of the deceased are meant to do. And let's keep in mind, I think this was spoken about in a previous session, the concept of mourning in and of itself is not specifically for the deceased, but much more for the people who are mourning. It's a special system that's set into place. We have a special system set up of 7 days, and then a month, and then 11 months, etc., and then a whole year. It brings us through the process. And one of that fascinating points of that is the 11th month Kaddish period, right? The mourners, those who are left behind, so to speak, of the deceased, children, or depending on the situation, who it is, would be saying Kaddish for 11 months. Why? What's Kaddish? What do we do? And to that, we look at a very important concept. Taking a step back, is there such a thing as eternal damnation? Someone who is, locked out forever. So Rabbi Yasser just mentioned there are 3 groups. Even that, it's not so simple. But we're going to put those 3 groups aside. Besides for those 3 groups, which the Talmud describes, do not get led into heaven, every single soul is allowed to eventually bask in the glory of godliness and to sit at the table, so to speak, at the yeshiva and absorb all of the wonderful wisdom. Everybody is allowed. But you might need to go to the car wash first. You might need to cleanse a little bit, depending on what you did, on what your actions were on this world. So it's all about this world. Your soul has been enclosed in the physical body for however many years, 120 years, let's say, and your actions affected your soul. And if you did good things, then your soul is nice and bright and clean. If you did some things which were not so perfect, then you start dirtying up your soul a little bit, only on the outside surface. You can't really get inside. You can't really penetrate inside like that. On the outside of the soul, you can become a little bit, in Yiddish we say schmutzig, a little dirty. So what happens? There needs to be a cleansing process. It's a fascinating story of a teacher, Chabad teacher, before my times, and he was very, very well known for not showing up to his classes. Okay, so he was a little bit, a little absent-minded, and he would forget that he was supposed to come to a class. He was a little bit, that was basically his style. And at one point, he gives his class a test, and one of the students miserably fails the test. Okay, he comes to the teacher, calls him in and says, your test, you 20% on the test, this is unacceptable. So he turns to the teacher and he says, you're right, but you never came to teach the class. So how was I supposed to know the material, right? I'm here, you're here 20% of the time, so I got 20% on my test. It kind of makes sense. So the teacher looks at him very sternly and he says, let me tell you a little story. There was a fellow who went through life, and whatever he did, he always had an excuse. Found excuses for everything he did. So he stole something from someone. He had an excuse. It was not his fault. This happened, that happened, something. All the bad things that he did, he always had a list of excuses. And he would give it to everybody who would listen. He would explain, right? This is why I did this. This is why I did that. I never did anything wrong in his life. And we all know people like that, right? This is why I did it. I didn't do anything wrong in my life. Everything I did was perfect. You did that? There was an excuse. I didn't mean to. It wasn't what I meant to do, etc. After 120 years, he goes up on high and he's brought to the heavenly court, and they say, you've done this problem and this thing, and he gives it every time, everything that they list, every issue that they bring up, he explains, he gives an excuse. He explains why it wasn't his fault. They say, okay, you're right. Every single thing that you've done, you have an excuse. You get to go into the big yeshiva. And he's put it right, he's done nothing wrong. So he sits at the best place. He's sitting right next to Rabbi Yasser. No, he's sitting right next to, sitting up front. And everyone's looking at him. So everybody looking at him. Starts looking around, he's looking around. And why is everybody staring at me? Right? Sometimes we think everybody's staring at us. In this case, everybody was staring at him. Everybody was staring at him, and he asks someone next to him, he says, why is everybody staring at me? So he says, because your face is covered in dirt. You're totally dirty face. You've got schmutz all over your face. So he says, where does the schmutz come from? So he says, all the things that you did, all the terrible things that you did, they show up on your face, right? It's the soul standing there. So the guy says, but I didn't do anything wrong. I had an excuse for everything I did. And the person replies, the guy sitting next to him replies, yeah, but your face is still dirty. You never cleaned up, right? You didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't your fault, but your face is still dirty. That's the concept, right? When things that are done that are not supposed to be done, things that are a little off, you dirty up a little bit. You played in the mud, so to speak, and now you're dirty. So there has to be a cleansing process. The Talmud describes that the worst person imaginable, except for the three categories that Rabbi Azrael mentioned previously, nobody can go through the cleansing process for more than 12 months. The worst person possible can only go through the process, only needs to be cleansed up to 12 months. That's the most that we do. It's a 12-month process for the worst possible person that we can possibly imagine. Comes the custom that we say Kaddish for 11 months. What's Kaddish? Kaddish is, if you study the words, it has nothing to do with death. The words of Kaddish are literally exalting God. We're saying how amazing and powerful and wonderful God is. Iskadal v'iskadash be'rabah. May it be greatened and may it be whole and saint. What's the English translation? I'm slipping my mind. Glorified, sanctified may be your holy name.
I don't think you should translate. Every Jew should know what the meaning of the Kaddish is.
There you go. Exactly. So this is something, right? We're glorifying Hashem. We're saying how great and how wonderful God is. But when you do that, what you're doing is you're shielding the soul of the person you're saying Kaddish for from the cleansing process. Not that you're shielding it necessarily, but you perform the cleansing in a non-painful way. So now imagine you were dirty and instead of taking a shower, you went into the washing machine. All right. It would hurt, right? To think about a piece of laundry, especially in the old days, that got dirty. What was the classical, right? The classical picture you have of an old housewife at the river with a stone and beating the piece of garment. So that's kind of what happens. You have to really, when you really want to get schmutz, when you're going to get some dirt out, you got to give it a good smacking. And that's kind of what happens. The Kaddish process relieves, cleans it up a little bit without the beat up, so to speak, without the soul having to go through the more painful cleansing process. That's why we say Kaddish. Why 11 months? Because nobody wants to say that their loved one was that person that needed the full 12 months. We do 11 months to say, yes, I'm there. I don't know, maybe he only needed 1 day, maybe he needed no time. I want to protect the person, but I don't want to say that the person was so bad that he needed the full 12-month process. So we protect the, we accomplish the cleansing. Again, we could do it down here in a much easier way. Saying Kaddish is a lot simpler than the cleansing process they might have to go through in the soul process. We can do it down here in a much more efficient manner. That's what we do. We say Kaddish for 11 months, and then we know at that point, we're not sure at what point the soul is allowed in, but we're taken care, and the soul can then join the Great Assembly, the Great Yeshiva, and they'll wait around for a couple of more years, 20, 30, 50 more years until Rabbi Azrael joins them. And then another 50, 100 years until I'm there, and then we'll be ready to go.
Oh, okay.
I'm coming too.
Now, this is why we need to know all the names of the angels. So there are more than one heaven. According to the tradition, there are 7 heavens, and one can move from heaven to heaven. That's why it's so important for us to know all the names of the angels, and there are a few 100,000 angels. And so those are the people that you're going to meet on the way up. And so you better know their names. For example, I discovered as a result of going to Spain that I am one of those angels, Azriel. Any kind of ending with L, there is a little bit of the angelic power in them. So maybe I'll meet some of you on the way up. Now, the belief also is that every time you say Kaddish, your soul moves a little bit higher. So Kaddish is also a way, maybe there was a need to guarantee the Kaddish sayers, if they had a purpose, which is to elevate the soul. No one wants the soul of the loved one to be on the bottom part. So you want that soul to get to the 7th heaven. And so you find a way to, through the Kaddish prayer, to move the soul higher and higher. By the way, one of the things that exists today is a Kaddish sayer. If you can say the Kaddish, that's wonderful. But there are some people that have difficulty in uttering the Kaddish. So there are people who are professional Kaddish sayers, and you can pick them up from any website that is connected to Jerusalem and other cities in Israel. You, of course, will have to send a donation to them. That's why it's so important that all of us men and women, have the power to say Kaddish for loved ones that died in their family. What about the idea of being on the yeshiva of Hai, studying? You heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it sounds wonderful, isn't it?
it sounds very wonderful.
Too bad I have to wait for you.
You have to wait.
come.
No, you're not going anywhere.
I know,
You're sticking around.
feels good. Now, we mentioned those three groups that heaven is close to them. The one group is idol worshiper. Second group is people that committed incest. And the third one is, what did I say? What was the?
If you don't believe in.
Yeah, if you don't believe in God. If you don't believe in God and the resurrection, this is another group that will not inherit Shamayim, heaven, or the process of getting the soul to heaven will be a little bit more cumbersome. Except of course, those three distinct groups are constantly mentioned as people that will not get to heaven and receive the reward that heaven can offer the people that spend most of their life as in the image of God and worked very hard. And this is denied from those people. Those are the three groups. So now, don't forget when you are at what's the show on TV that has questions? You ask it in the form of a question.
Jeopardy.
Jeopardy. So when you are next time on Jeopardy, please remember those three groups, and you'll be able to move to the next stage.
It's good to know.
Are there any questions? Should we take a minute for?
Yeah,
questions?
please.
Anything on the chat or anybody want to chime in?
I can read it, Chet. Where is it?
No, it's on the bottom.
Mark will.
Mark will read it
Oh,
for us.
okay.
Trying to get to it, Mark.
Or Karen will.
Actually, Karen, why don't you get to it? Because I got bad glasses to see it.
So far, no questions yet.
Oh,
Steve
yeah,
is
so-
unmuted. Steve is raising his hand.
Okay,
Shalom.
Both of you deliver beautiful remarks, and I'm not differing with that. But I raised the question is, what is so we don't know the details and so forth, at least in my view, of what heaven is like. But is the point of living the afterlife? Or is there a difference there? We look at Christianity and it seems to put all the emphasis on resurrection and heaven and admission to heaven. Whereas my understanding from Judaism is our emphasis is not that. I don't know how you look at that.
Yeah, but you definitely have few times in the Siddur that you have and that I practice from about the world to come. This is the fruit of the work we do on earth that will guarantee the following blessings. So it's encouragement for all of us to participate in a wedding, to go with the funeral group to the cemetery, to study Torah, to give donations to different Jewish causes. So if you complete all of those tasks in your life, and the study of Torah is the most important because it leads to them all, so then there is reward in the world to come. It's definitely a prayers that we always use in our prayers about the benefit of doing the mitzvot.
But do we perform the mitzvot because the reward will be heaven? Or do we do the mitzvot because this is we can understand that. And this is our obligation as creatures of God living on this earth to
But the
perform these
language,
tasks.
but the language of the reward is a language that is connected to fulfillment of the mitzvot. So maybe someone made a mistake and decided to seduce us by telling us about the world to come.
Mind if I come with a little bit of a slightly different angle?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
You're so
The-
polite.
I try. So this is actually an important question in my mind. And it's something we kind of touched on before, but we're gonna refocus on it for a moment now. And it's a fascinating analogy. Should we do things for reward? Right? That's basically what the question is. And the question really exists not just for the afterlife, but really for this life. If you read the book of in Leviticus, where it describes the rewards and the punishment of doing things that we should or shouldn't, and again, it's repeated in another form in the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim, again, repeats what would happen if we do wrong, we do things wrong, and then what happens when you do the right thing. It describes all the wonderful things that we get. And that's not just in the afterlife, that's actually in this physical world. In the recitation that we have of the Shema, the second paragraph describes that if we do the right thing, if you do the right things, then God will give us plenty. And if we don't do if we do the wrong things, God will hold it back. Right? So do we do the mitzvot for reward? Right? Do we perform the mitzvot for reward? And there's a fascinating story of the first Chabad Rebbe, Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi. He wrote Tanya, fabulous, fascinating book about basically it's a wonderful and one of the first do-it-yourself self-help books, basically, and basically teaching you how to be a perfect person in what he describes as the long short way. Describes the long short way versus the short long way. Sometimes you have a very short path, but it's blocked by a wall. Short long way because you'll never get there. Short, right? It's a much shorter path, but you'll never get to the destination. Sometimes the route that you have to take is much longer, but you will reach to your destination. So the Rav Shneur Zalman was once heard to say, he was in the middle of his prayers, and he stopped for a moment, and he was known to speak in a sing-song, and he said it in Yiddish, but I'll just say it in the English. He says, I don't want your Garden of Eden. I don't want your world to come. All I want is you alone. And he was obviously speaking about God. In other words, his entire desire, his entire purpose on this world, what he wanted was to connect to God.
Well, it's a translation of Matovo Alecha Yaakov, that I want to be always in the oil.
Right. I always want to be connected to God. So now what we find is that the Torah does promise us rewards, the world to come, but we also have this concept of serving God just for the sake of connecting to God. I think we touched upon this in one of the previous big midrashas maybe last year. It describes in Pirkei Avot, that was the Pirkei Avot class that I think I did with Rabbi, now I'm forgetting his name.
One of the many rabbis.
But he was,
Some of the good rabbis.
yes, I forgot who it was, but it describes, do not be one of the servants that serve the master in order to receive reward, but rather be one of the servants who serve the master not in order to receive reward. So that's the way, that's what to aspire to. And the analogy that's given is quite beautiful. If, let's say, you're training your child, you're helping your child along with, let's say, potty training. I'm kind of in that zone right now, so I'm gonna get in there, right? Or for example, a child needs to go to the doctor and get his vaccinations or his shots, and they don't want to do it. So you can bribe the child with a toy or a candy, right? Something to convince the child to kind of, like you said, bribe the child with the reward, candy.
Or join the Republican Party.
That's it. Right? What are we saying? I'm not employed. So, right, we can give the child, we can explain to the child all you want that the vaccination is really something very nice. It's really helpful to them. They're not going to get sick because of it. So maybe a little bit of a pinch now, and it might hurt a little bit, right? Or going to the potty training, you'll be more free. You won't be, you won't walk around with your own stinking whatever going around, right? There's advantages for all that. But the child is a child. He has a child brain, right? He doesn't understand those things necessarily. So you convince them and you bribe them, you train them with a candy. With a treat, with a toy, or whatever it may be. Eventually, as the child gets older, becomes a little bit more astute and a little bit more clever, they start realizing that there's more to life than just the candy, right? So first of all, they'll go to bigger toys, right? So what's the difference between a boy and a man? Size of their toys. But that's again, when you aspire to be someone a little bit more intellectually astute, then you're not looking for the reward necessarily. You're not looking for the big toys that you want to play with, those types of things. You live life for more altruistic type of purposes. However, right, if the child is only going to do what they're going to do, or if someone is a little bit older, maybe you expect a little bit better from them, but they're only going to do what they're going to do. They're only going to do the right thing if they're getting a reward. Does that mean they shouldn't do the right thing? Or we can promise them reward, and that way they'll continue to do the right thing. The Talmud describes that you should do things for the wrong reasons, not for the wrong reasons, for the non-right reasons. Do it for the not correct reason, because eventually that'll train you to do it for the correct
Lead
reason.
you to the
Right,
correct
right,
reason.
right. Talmud,
מתוך ש-
They'll arrive to doing it for the correct reason. They'll drive to doing it for the correct purpose. So to me, the perspective that the Torah kind of goes with here is that we have reward described in the Torah, in the physical sense, in this world, in the spiritual sense, in the world to come, and many, many more. The coming of Mashiach really describes wonderful things, but that's not necessarily the purpose of why we should live, why we should perform good things, why we should do what's right. Rather, we should do it because it's the right thing to do, or more importantly, because that's what God asked us to do. We want to have a relationship to God. Like Rabbi Azrael mentioned, right? Matovo Olecha, we want to be in a relationship with God. How are you in a relationship? Constantly. How? By doing the things that God wants. How do you have a good relationship with your wife? We expect to do, sometimes our spouses expect us to do what they want without actually ever telling us to do it. God has a similar expectation. He wants us to do the mitzvot. He wants us to perform the mitzvot, not because we're going to get a reward at the end, but rather because we want to be connected. We want to be close. We want to have that relationship. If you cannot reach that level yet, not every, right? Sometimes emotionally, people are stunted. People go to therapy for years and years because they're emotionally stunted. They haven't broken out of that status yet. They're still a child, right? Some people say it in a positive way. I find it to definitely be a positive, right? They say the children's meal at the wedding is only for children, right? The chicken nuggets and the franks and blanks. So I'm a child at heart, so right, I can get that at my own wedding. By the way, I had the children's meal in case you're worried, because it tastes better than the stuffed chicken. I don't know.
You're right.
So if you haven't graduated out of your childhood, then that doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing the right things. You can still continue to do the things that are right for the wrong reasons, or not the wrong reasons, for the not right reasons, right? For the reward. And that's fine. And the reward is there, it's on the side. But our aspiration should always be to do it because it's the right thing, because we want to connect to God. I think that's
which is so interesting, because one of the slogans in America is the winner is the one that dies with most of the toys.
What?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the danger of the living in a capitalistic world with no religion, with no beliefs, with it's amazing how corrupt we become, some of us, living in this world that is completely depleted from things that we need to do for the sake of God. And sometimes all those commercials that are trying to divert us constantly from believing in God. It's about the taste, about how it looks, about the car, about all those kind of things. Maybe we should start having commercials about God, getting closer to God. Yeah, we have
a couple questions in the chat.
yeah.
The first one is from Debbie Friedman. She asked, what about reincarnation of the soul?
Since I don't believe in it, maybe you can start.
have a list. Kabbalah describes a very fascinating concept, is that Torah, if you count it, and it's not so easy to count because it's a lot of verses, there are 613 commandments in the Torah. And within that, there are layers and levels within each of the commandments. So we're obligated to complete all 613 commandments. However, for most of us, it's impossible to complete and to accomplish all of those commandments. There's a lot, and there's a lot of them that you're not able to do unless you're in a certain specific situation.
And the temple is built.
Exactly. So they have to be in the time of the temple. You have to perhaps be a Kohen, right? One of the priestly families, which I am not, fortunately for me, I think. a little bit more restrictive. It's a little bit more difficult in that way. You have to be maybe of the Levite tribe or different things. There are certain mitzvot that are only applicable to men, and there are certain mitzvot that are only applicable to women. Right? So if I'm a man, I cannot do the mitzvot that the women can do. If I'm a woman, I can't do the mitzvot that man can do. There's that distinction, right? I can't do it. So too, certain mitzvot can only be done if you're in a certain financial capabilities, right? We don't necessarily decide how much we're going to earn. If you're a certain level of wealth, you can perform more mitzvot in certain ways, and et cetera, et cetera. So you can't perform every single one of the mitzvot at any given time, in any lifetime. It would be impossible to accomplish all 613 mitzvot in any lifetime. As such, the soul is given the opportunity to accomplish every single one of the mitzvot by coming back in another person's in another body, and they keep coming back. Sometimes it might be to rectify something that has been done in a previous level. Sometimes it's or in a previous lifetime, so to speak. So the soul is. The way it's described in Kabbalah and the Zohar is that there's a throne, God sitting on a throne. It's obviously not a physical throne, talking about spiritual, as Rabbi Azrael mentioned previously, it's a spiritual world. We use physical terms to make it sound like we can understand it, but it's not something that we can comprehend unless we're in that spiritual realm. And under God's throne, there's a treasure chest with all of the souls. And God hooks out souls and puts them into people. Today, it's almost impossible, it's almost never that you'll find a brand new soul come into this world. Rather, it's all souls that have been reincarnated. They've been here before, and we're here to either complete the mission that hasn't been done yet, or recycled. Exactly. God's the first recycler, right? We think it's a new thing, and we're all excited about it. God's been recycling for 5,500 years. And there's different descriptions of this point. So reincarnation from humans to humans, the Kabbalah clearly describes this type of event, and it's something that we find in different stories and different stories of the Talmud that is discussed. Whether or not there is reincarnation where a human soul can be embedded in another object is a fascinating discussion, which I don't think we have the time to really break down right now. It's a little bit too nuanced.
But it can be topic for next year.
Sure. Reincarnation and
so is the Messiah.
Mashiach, I think we need a whole series for. Right? It's a 6-part series, maybe. So yes, reincarnation definitely exists. The soul comes back. It's given the ability once again to perform the mitzvah that it hasn't done, or if something had been done in a previous correction life, it has to, right? It's there for correction. There's some fascinating stories that have been told about. The Talmud actually describes a lot of some certain stories where a soul has been reincarnated to fix a specific mission and the right specific thing that has been done incorrectly. And there are fascinating stories where a child comes into the world, and after a very young age they pass away, and the parents are explained that this child is a soul of a very righteous person that was missing one really little speck in their perfection, and the child came back to correct it. So don't be, you can be very sad about the child passing at a very young age, but the story, right, giving the perspective for the parent to say that this child really was completing a lifetime of a mission, and that really gives you some perspective.
But please be careful in the way you're telling it to a bereaved family that lost their child.
Right. No, this is not, you and I cannot tell this to someone. This is just something as a perspective to know. You and I don't know where the soul has been before. We don't know what the answer is.
Thank God.
Exactly. But we're describing stories in the Talmud where the sages then knew what the background was, and therefore were able to kind of give their parents that information. So yeah, no, it's not for you and me to start guessing what might have happened here. We've bereaved parents. That comes from the Talmud, the Pirkei Avot describe. Do not try to calm your friend in his time of bereavement. When someone's grieving, they need to go through that process of grieving. But that's a whole nother discussion.
Okay, next question comes from Marla Cohen, and she asks, how does Chabad teachings on the afterlife differ from Reform Judaism?
Thank you, Marla.
I think we just talked about this for the last
45, 50 minutes or so. Yeah.
Isn't there a tape? We're recording it.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe one option is to listen to the recording.
Yeah, that'll be up on YouTube shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shortly.
Well, not tonight.
Hello. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more questions?
I came on. And Karen didn't mention that. I came on late, so I thought maybe that was just a little touched on. I didn't realize it was the whole session. So thank you.
It's okay.
I will watch it.
Okay, were there any other
Any
questions
other
in the comments?
Nope, that's the fine, that's the last of the questions.
It was really a pleasure to be here with you on the panel.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will remind people that the series for Beit Midrash last year and this year as we go along is up on YouTube. There's a Jewish Federation YouTube channel, and you can go there to search and find the ones that you like.
I think in conclusion, I think we have a limited time on Earth. I don't think 120 is enough. But we need to do the best we can with the time that is allotted to us by God. And let's not waste the life that we were given. Amen.
Amen.
And on that note, we'll just, again, going from the ethics of our fathers, the description of Rabbi Yishmael, who he was 80 years old at the time, and he says, do not trust yourself until the day you die. The concept being is that it's constantly a struggle, and we should, like Rabbi Azrael was saying, definitely always strive to do the best that we can.
And
That's what
also
we're
try
expected to
to repent one day before you die.
Because we all know when that is, right?
Yeah,
Stop watching.
it's such a wonderful teaching.
And I want to end off with one last statement. This is a fascinating story of two Hasidic rabbi brothers from about 300 years ago. One of them, right before he was about to pass away, he was crying, and he was a great sage, wise man, a teacher of many students. And his students asked him, "Why are you crying?" So he explained something very, very powerful. He says, when I go up to the heavenly throne and they're going to judge me whether or not I was someone who was righteous or not, they're not going to ask me why I didn't behave like Moses, why I wasn't at Moses or Abraham. They're going to ask me, how come, forgot his name, how come Shmuel didn't behave as perfectly as Shmuel could have been? How come you weren't the best you can be?
Yeah.
Right? So that's the army slogan, at least it used to be, is be all that you can be. And that's very much the Jewish perspective. Do everything that you can. You're not expected to be better than who you are, but you're expected to be the best you that you can be. And often that's the best ever. Anyways.
Good words.
Be the best version you can be.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
And your time with us. Next week, we will see you for a discussion on marriage and divorce with Rabbi Katzman. So we'll be moving on to our focus. This evening has been wonderful. We appreciate you so much and all you do for our community. Likewise to all of you, we appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely evening. Laila Tov. We'll see you next time.